Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We are glad you're with us. What is it like to become a pilot in your 40s and 50s? The challenges are unique for those of us in midlife, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences of being a midlife pilot. Join the Midlife Pilot community and listen in every week. We are not CFIs or particularly intelligent, so if you want to learn how to fly, talk to anyone else other than the hosts of a podcast. Even this intro was too challenging for us, and we used a robot to do it. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello, and welcome to episode 88 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast, where we talk all things flying and aviation in midlife. My name is Ben. I'm a commercial certificated pilot here in the Atlanta metro area, flying a Cessna 182 we like to call the Beast. Joining me tonight, we have my friend Brian, a private pilot living in Nashville, which is the home of the Bachelorette Super Charlie. He flies a Cherokee 180 named Lucy. Hello, sir.
Hello, and it's good to see you again. I just saw you the other day, so this is great.
Twice in a week's period, man. That's
a little much. I know.
Also, from the West Coast, our favorite sport pilot on a podcast, whose name is Ted, flying a Flight Design CTLS we like to call the Egg. Good evening, sir.
Hey, glad to see you guys.
Glad to see you as well. Guys, what have y'all been doing?
Hey, you know what I've been doing. You know what I've been doing. Flying to see wherever you are. That's what I'm doing. If Ben is going to enter the state or pass through it, then I just stop what I'm doing. And I just, so I'm proud to say that what I accomplished this week is that I beat an L39 to a destination. So in a Cherokee. So,
yep. And what was your route of flight was how many miles?
A little bit less. And I also had already landed at the destination that you were meeting us in by the time you took off. And it was great because number one, I was very excited for you getting a ride in an Albatross. Very, very, very cool. Secondly, I knew that everybody at the airport in Owensboro was going to be amazed when this plane came in because there was nothing really going on.
Right.
So I was just excited to sort of see the spectacle unfold. I was also just excited to see, I didn't realize how cool you would look in a jumpsuit. That was nice. But more than anything, it was, I was just on the ground and I thought, and you texted me and said, we're firing up the engines now, or the engine now or whatever. And in any normal world, that is oh man, I got here way too early. What am I going to do for all of this time? But in this situation, it was, oh, all right, I'll just do a little bit of this and that. He'll be here in a minute. So, and then I watched you guys come in at your ground speed of whatever it was, 350 knots or whatever it was. And I just thought, wow, like that is the way to get around. So I know you're asking me what I did. All I did was fly a bug smasher back and forth to Owensboro and some other places around this weekend. But how was your ride in the L39? Because I know things about it.
It was memorable. I will absolutely agree to that. So my friend at our airport has this airplane. And for those in the chat and out there in the audio only world, your last, episode, I had to leave my plane in Owensboro to replace an alternator. And my friend, Mr. Larry Lee, who owns this L39 Albatross, I did a favor for him on an Angel Flight mission where he used his airplane as a static display at another airport, not too close to here. I flew over to where he was, picked him up and brought him back, and he offered to take me up for a flight sometime. Well, now I have an airplane in Owensboro, and I need a way to get there. So why not call in the favor of a L39 ride? And we found a date. It worked. And first of all, he's an incredible guy, which we'll get to maybe in a minute. But we're on the ground. He's briefing me on everything. I'm putting on the Nomex suit, looking all Top Gun-ish, wearing this flight suit. And, he's like, what maneuvers would you like to do? And I'm like, well, I want to start off kind of easy, do a couple of aileron rolls. I said, I'd like to see how you actually do a barrel roll. Just what mechanics do you input to accomplish that maneuver? And then we'll see where we go from there. And then we get up, we take off. We pull about 2.5 Gs in our turn when we were cleared to turn to our next, to our destination. We were flying VFR. And it was, a lot of things you got to keep in mind. We had to stay below 200 knots when we were at 10,000 feet or under. So he's pulling back on the throttle pretty hard and climbing pretty quick. And then he hands the controls over to me. And we start accelerating, and we were at 10,000 feet. And he says, all right, I want you to give me a 30-degree nose-up attitude at this power setting, and let's see what we can get when we go up to 15,000. And we were climbing at 6,000 feet per minute. So needless to say, I pulled back on the yoke, on the stick, for a very short period of time, and then pushed it back forward, which was pretty cool. And then he said, all right, to do a barrel roll, what I want you to do is lift the nose up. Or we put the nose down to gain speed, then lift it about 10 degrees up and just throw the stick over one way or the other. And I did that. And my body quickly said, that's not cool. They didn't like it. So I told Larry, I was like, I need to settle down for a second. I didn't have anything to eat. I had nothing in my stomach, okay, except for a cup of coffee. And we tried to the right. Made it worse. And I thought it was ironic that Flight Chops released his most recent video this weekend with his 15-year-old doing rolls and loops and all this stuff and having a blast. And I'm sitting here getting so nauseous. So we ended up chilling out for the rest of the flight, just kind of taking in the views, making a few steep turns and just trying to get a feel for the jet. That was really cool. It is it's a very easy plane to fly, and it's 10 times more difficult to taxi it.
Oh, yeah.
He let me taxi it in McCollum, and you would think I was the drunkest guy you've ever seen. Braking system that's just really, and Larry, the owner of the jet, would tell you that is much harder to learn how to taxi than it is to fly it. So anyway, it was a great, great time. We had a good laugh. I told him about Ted's plastic egg, burning 4 gallons an hour, getting, 30 miles to the gallon. I said, how much are we burning here? And he goes, we're doing about 300 gallons a side an hour. So, not the most economical, but man, it is a lot of fun to fly.
Wow. I didn't even realize it was that much. And yeah, it was really interesting, by the way, to see some observations. Number one, when you got out of the plane and I was standing there, I asked you if the apparatus that you were wearing around your waist was part of some sort of thing you needed to be wearing to be in this plane. And you properly explained to me that, no, I'm having some back problems.
Very midlife of me to say.
It's like it was the most midlife possible thing that could have happened in that moment.
In my defense, Larry told me up front, or before we, on a brief the night before, that the seats are really, really hard because they are live ejection seats. Now, we had the pins in. We didn't, they weren't live on our flight, but they can be. So I do have a little bit of a defense for that piece of it. What were the other observations?
That's good. Because when you're ejecting, you just don't want to, hurt the small of your back a little bit, right?
That's exactly right.
And then the other thing was, it was great. By the way, we had a great lunch, and that was fun to meet Larry and talk with him and eat entirely too much food. And so that was great. Then when it was time to go, 2 observations of mine. One was how strange it was to me that that plane is there. For some reason, I just feel like if you're going to fly a plane like that, it's going to be really involved for you to start it up and get going and all that. He kind of just hopped in it like it was a Honda Civic, you know what I mean? And just like powered it up, I'm out. And he was gone. And then he gave us a little air show. He got the smoke going and did a flyby. So he coordinated with the tower, I guess. There's nothing going on over there. So that was super awesome. And then I don't know. I feel like I'd like to experience that all the time.
Yeah, it was. I got on frequency right after he did the flyby, and I was talking to Tower, and I said, "Did you get to see the flyby?" And he was like, "I just took over the shift, and I missed the whole thing."
No, I heard that. No, I heard that.
He was so pissed that he missed it.
No, it was my favorite thing. It was kind of like because I know that you like to be chummy with ATC. It's just your nature. You're a very chummy kind of guy on the frequency.
Yes.
And you're always looking to sort of maybe get them kind of a little, loose, right?
Right.
And I had already taken off and I was climbing out and I heard you say when you got cleared for takeoff or, when you said you were holding short or something and you said, won't be as interesting as the L39 that just took off out of here or whatever. And he goes, well, I'll take your word for it. I don't know. I just got in.
Oh.
It was very dry, and I could tell it burst your bubble so bad, and I was laughing so hard when I was climbing out. And then, by the way, I'm sorry, Ted, I want to hear all the things you have to say about this. Before I forget, Ben, when we haven't even talked about this, but when we left, we were looking at the clouds and there was a lot of clouds and down to like 1,800 feet or whatever it was. But there were holes and, we were looking around on the ground like, yep, I'm going to go through that one probably. There's a gap over there. And then as you were walking away, you said, well, you better get your IFR. And totally
I
right.
said, if you had your IFR, this would not be a problem.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad. And then, so then when I took off before you, I could not go on course, right? I don't know if you noticed how far east I went, and you knew exactly what I was doing. And then you took off, and we're obviously, like runway heading, and I am, whatever, messing around here out east for not even anywhere near where I'm trying to go.
Climbing at 400 feet per minute, trying to get to 9,000 feet.
Yeah. Well, I originally chose 7,500 and then realized that it was going to have to be more than that. I don't know did you hear on frequency when somebody else came on and they said, well, we had another guy out here a minute ago. It was a photographer and he was asking for 5,500 and the controller was like, I don't know. We had somebody in this area a minute ago just off of Owensboro that needed to get to 9,500 and the photographer was all dejected. He was like, so that was me. But anyway, it was really fun. I was really hoping at some point, we eventually kind of got on a parallel.
Yes.
And it almost felt like we were kind of going the same speed. I'm not sure how that's possible, but we were not that disparate. And we were kind of you were about 3 or 4 miles to my side and we were going the same way. And I was at 9,500 at that point. And then I'm looking down for you. I'm trying to see, I actually had my phone out. I was waiting for you to bust out of the clouds and see if I could see you enough, even if it was a little dot. But I never did see you. But it was really fun to be sort of in parallel with, it's like
the whole time,
IFR pilot.
The whole time I'm like, we've got to come up with a method, like always put fingers in standby.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at least, if that situation were to arise.
Were you checking on fingers to see if I was on it?
I did.
Oh, I screwed that up.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I didn't expect you to. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So anyway,
all right. In the future,
it was overall, it was a really incredible experience. My nausea put aside, I do want to get back up on that horse and try it again, but I was kind of, disappointed in myself that happened. But is what it is. And
it's just biology.
The other interesting fact was it was literally a 40-minute flight from McCollum to Owensboro. And it was an hour and 59 minutes from Owensboro back to McCollum.
So. And how long would it be in Lucy? It's like 2.5. It's just like, each way we can find is going to be slower and slower than the one before it.
It's just more flying.
I know we're going to get to our topic here in a minute, but I did want to highlight, Grizzly had asked and I know AJ answered it, but for the rest of the group, is it one of those where you set the rudder and then the handbrake to do a differential braking? This jet has a cast ring nose wheel. So the only way to turn it is differential braking. And if you want to go left, you push in the left rudder, which doesn't do anything, and then you pull the handbrake and it will engage the left brake. If you want to stop both feet have to be even with each other, and then you pull the brake and it'll distribute the pressure to both brakes and cause you to stop. And it will mess up your mind when you try to hold a center line. It is really a difficult thing to do. So,
do you have other experience with free cast ring nose wheels?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But with toe brakes, it's almost no different than having a steerable nose wheel.
Yeah.
It's practically the same in my opinion.
Just when getting started with that, it is easy to just wander back and forth.
But when you're doing it with, all right, it's almost like you have to be a drummer, Brian.
Yeah.
Put your right foot in and then hit your hand and then put your left foot in and then,
Yeah.
There's a lot more coordination involved. But anyway, I want to hear about somebody got a new hanger.
Yeah, well, first, Grizzly said SR71 speed check, and I'll make sure to link to that in the doobly-doo. And yeah, that was all I was thinking was, if it was me in the L39, you'd be asking permission to buzz the tower every time you're at a towered airport. Like, why wouldn't you? That's what that plane was designed for. So, I had my much less exciting hangar move this week. So I have been waiting over a year and a half for this hangar that was closer, and I started moving my stuff to it. And I was like, I'm going to move the plane last because otherwise I have no reason to drive way over to the other side of town, and because the plane's not there. So I have been going over there, moving stuff, and then flying the plane for a little bit and going back home. But I went and I thought I had a couple more loads, but I got everything in one car load, my electric El Camino, as I call it, and took it across town, put it in the hangar, not assembling anything, just getting it all out into the hangar. That's a nice advantage of a high wing, is you can use all that extra room. And I thought, you know what? I don't need to bother my partner to get a ride across town and get dropped off and everything else. All I have to do is take my little scooter and go up to the light rail. I can ride light rail for an hour and 40 minutes to the other airport, get to my plane, fly it back. And so that's what I did, and put the scooter in the plane. And so it was the, planes, trains, and automobiles type thing of all of those methods of moving. And the 30 minutes it took me to scooter, hour 40 for the max light rail, and then 21 minutes on the flight back, which was not a direct route. They kind of stuffed me waiting for a departure or for an arrival that was coming in. So 21 minutes, and that was still slower than it would normally be between those two airports in the plane. So moved into the new hangar. It's a smaller but still towered airport, and the hangars are old and rusty and a little dingy and everything else, and it's hard to open the doors. They're really heavy and just all that type of stuff. And as I was getting out of the plane, unloading and everything else, I started to meet all the neighbors, and it was very much Brian's the video that I think of as being the gravel parking lot video, which is actually the Nobody Cares Nashville Fly-In, Nashville Meetup video. So we'll link that. But because I went from knowing a few people just in passing to instant community, I've got access to the hangar with the 59 182 and a couple of kayaks in it, and because there's two rivers right there, and meet everybody around there and hear all the stories, and watch a son of a guy fly the RV4 for his first time in his life that his dad built 25 years ago, 27, whatever, somewhere through there. So he grew up with this plane. He's never flown it. And we stood there and watched him fly and land this, tail wheel RV4. So it was a cool experience of instantly being like, all right, this is a good place to be. So Lots of cool
your
stories.
Your previous place was just a hangar. You've moved into a home, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Anyway,
and so the only thing that was weird, the only thing that was weird is that you just felt like, well, I don't really have a flag with a pentagram on it, but I'm going to have to get one to fit in around here.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I was invited to fly out to a private airstrip that's not too far away that there's apparently events that go on at. And everybody desperately wants rides in my plane. And I can actually fit in the child seat in the back of the RV4 that's very weight limited. And so I'll get up in that sometime. It's
fun.
Just great experience, meeting
awesome,
all these people.
man.
And yeah. So yeah, Captain Todd, what's a hangar? Yeah, sorry. I know.
It's the thing you put your coat on when you go inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I know of a hangar. I don't know of anything else. That's for sure.
And, right. It's, you get to hear these stories, Ben, of Alyssa going from one grand hangar to the next castle hangar that she's in. And
yes,
me having two hangars and the hassle of getting between them. And,
Yeah. Alyssa's hangar is like, look at I really like the natural light and it's like,
my hangar has a lot of natural light.
Yes.
Like it's all natural light. Speaking of which, our friend Biff said, I would have flown Alyssa out to decorate and prep before the new hangar, before moving in.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
She does great work.
She does great work.
Very
cool.
Well, so I'm super excited for you. Also jealous. You guys are just, getting hangars, L39 rides. But no, I mean, it's cool.
Look, you've got a plane and a hangar. It's all good.
No, I'm very lucky. And we have a push button electric door, Ted.
Yeah. That would be nice. Yeah.
Living large.
Fridge. Yeah.
Living large.
Yeah.
Let's take care of our housekeeping, as we always do.
Yes.
We broadcast live on YouTube, usually every Monday nights now at 8 p.m. Eastern. The live chat is open for questions and comments. However, it's primarily an audio podcast, so please subscribe using your favorite app. You can find podcast links, contact info, and become a Patreon supporter all at our website, midlifepilotpodcast.com. And we've gotten a few new Patreon members this past week since the last one. Would one of you guys like to inform the audience of who our new Patreon members are?
Yeah, I'll volunteer to do that. So at the Beast Stole Kit level, we have Jason P. and Nick C. At Hershey Bar, we have Braden G. At Landomatic, we have Jim, who we all know as over at the Flying Midwest podcast. We met up with him recently. Good guy. And we've also got Andy B. And I'm sure Andy's a good guy too. But
yeah, I'm sure they all are good guys. If they're subscriing to our Patreon account, they have to be.
Yeah. And
so
in the last week,
a couple of different.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ted.
I was going to say in the last week, we put up a Patreon only post. Ben and I and Mr. Geek, Mr. Wendell Geek, did a Killing Zone book analysis. We like to do those. So we call those the Killing Zone conversations. And it's the second one we've done. It's a good chance. Let's see, we're talking about takeoffs and weight and balance and things like that. So,
and how it relates to us and how we as midlifers, regardless of where you are in your aviation journey, whether you're 50 hours or 500 or 1,000 hours, things that you might not consider when you're considering weight and balance and takeoff distances and terrain and things like that.
And since we're not instructors and we're not capable of offering instruction, we like to lean on the Killing Zone because that's a book written from a place of authority. And so what we do is we read these things out and then just have conversations about it. Because I mean, it's kind of crazy how people get right into sort of speculation mode with accidents and things, but there's a lot less time spent on how to really pay attention to the lessons and to really relate those things. And it's one thing to do that internally when you're by yourself, I think.
Right.
To think about yourself and your own flying and your own habits and, all that. But it really, I think, amplifies the lessons or the value of the lessons in that book to talk them out with a couple of other people and then, share that stuff out. So that's a great reason to be involved in the Patreon.
Yeah. Yet another reason. Well, tonight we wanted to talk about tips and trials of flying in a sauna with a propeller.
Yeah.
Or flying in the summer. And, it doesn't matter if you live in Georgia or Florida, or if you live in Baltimore or Wisconsin or wherever. In the summer, it just gets hot as hell for all of us. And on the West Coast too, not excluding my West Coast friends. And we were talking a little bit about this. There's a couple of different aspects of flying during this time of the year. From a physiological standpoint, from an aircraft standpoint, we wanted to chat a little bit about, how we deal with it. As Brian mentioned earlier, we're not instructors and we barely know what we're talking about, but we do have our own experiences. And some of us have been doing it a little bit longer, and some of it use it as a weight loss plan in the summer to shed the weight. But so, Brian, you were talking a little bit earlier about something that you had during your private pilot training.
Well, yeah, I just realized when I was training, I was maybe it was one of those times where you've done your first solo, maybe your second solo, and now you're just trying to get some solo time. And I decided to do some pattern work. And I was, pretty excited because I was still in that moment of the thrill of, I can't believe that it's legal that I can come to this airport and just get into a plane and fly it and nobody runs to chase me down. So this is great. So I trained a lot with the weather being hot, up to that point. But in the situation that I was in, you know how it is when you're a student pilot solo, it's a little, it can be a little stressful. It can be a little nerve-wracking, and you're probably sweating enough on your own normally, or at least in a sort of an elevated state. And I got in the plane and, I think if I remember correctly too, it was one of those, I'm just trying to do stuff in the pattern, but there's 3 people waiting on IFR clearances ahead of me. And, so I'm on the ground for a good while, but I finally get up and I'm flying. And so obviously pattern flying, you're not getting anywhere really off the ground. So it's not much of any kind of reprieve other than just a little bit more wind coming through the vents. And, I came in and, had, sort of a stressful kind of, landing or something, and took off again, came back around. I think I got 1 or 2 more landings in, and I just realized, especially when you're on the downwind, that's the only moment where you can really relax, if at all, right? If you want to call that relaxing. And so I just remember being on the downwind and just thinking to myself, this is not good. I really felt out of sorts. I really felt kind of woozy, and kind of delirious. Yeah. And I just realized this is a decision-making time. This is one of those decision-making learning moments. As much as I want to fly right now, I am going to put this plane down and I'm just going to be done for the day. And I did. And I was so glad, because by the time I got back down, I was just absolutely drenched. I looked like I'd just gotten out of the pool. And it just struck me at that moment that they just don't, nobody can, this on that long list of things that they just can't prepare you for. You just have to go out and figure out and experience on your own. So anyway, I had that experience and it always stuck with me. And then, I've had experiences since I've been out there. I think I even talked about it on here once with last year when I was on my way to Marfa, and I think I stopped in San Angelo or something to get fuel. And I thought, my iPad was overheating and I was overheating. And what I realized, and what I want to talk about first with you guys, is I can tell you that I realize, at least my tendency is, and it's probably yours too, is when you're on the ground and it's hot, you hurry, you rush, you are really at the risk of skipping things. I have, I told you, like when I was at San Angelo, And I had to get a progressive taxi because I was so spun out. And I just thought the only way out of the situation is to get up in the air because I can't turn back. I was really like in a situation really where I should have turned back and just said, I don't need to be doing this. But instead I rushed the situation. I couldn't figure out, there was a lot of construction and it was just too much for my woozy head. And so I said, I just want to get out of here. And I pulled up to the hold short line and I said, what do you want me to do next? And he goes, well, you can either, run up and take off or just take off, or something. I was like, oh, I'm at the runway. Like I was so out of it. So it's scary though to rehash that in my mind and think about where I was. But
I get it.
Anyway, so have you guys had experiences like that? Just talking about on the ground.
Well, let me pop in. Mr. Grizzly said, not just because it's hot and bumpy in the air, but more likely to rush the pre-flight and run up to get out of the heat. Yes, for sure. I've got to say that, there's so many things to talk about with this, but one of the issues that I'll have is worrying about overheating. Even with a water-cooled engine, they have half a gallon of liquid. It's not very much, and they're prone to overheating. It's always because I'm waiting to take off and I've got my back to the wind, and that is a really bad combination in my plane. If I can get turned around, I'm fine. So it's sitting there starting to alarm about overheating. And so I'm just so worried about the plane. That's in addition to being concerned about myself and everything else. But there's so many, we could talk about that in so many different ways. But yeah.
So I took my private pilot training. I got to the meat of it in the summer of 2017. And I got signed off to solo in like early August. And so I'm like you, Brian. All I wanted to do was be in the air.
Yeah.
My symptoms of overheating are a little bit different. And there may be other people like this, but I don't know that I was as much woozy as I was tired. Like I would be like adrenaline. And as soon as adrenaline stopped and I got on the ground, it was pure exhaustion. And I would combat that after I did have one experience. I knew where I was going. McCollum is a simple airport, but I did recognize the fact that if I was at a different airport that I wasn't familiar with, it would have been a struggle for me. And as a result of that, I try to keep Gatorade on those really hot days just to try to keep the electrolytes going. But personally, I'm affected by really getting drowsy. And if I'm on the way home, I'm either getting Gatorade or coffee. I need something to move me along. So, and again, what Air Grizzly says, I get frustrated more easily. That's kind of a symptom. Sorry, Ted. That's more of a symptom of my exhaustion from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's just more important. Everybody might be a little bit different, but recognize what's going on. You have to be hopefully coherent enough that you can spot that you're woozy or that you're tired or whatever the case may be.
Well, and we're talking about mostly talking about looking back at the experiences. Brian's is a little different because it was definitely after training going to Texas, but a lot of this seems to happen in that first 100 hours because you've got a reservation for the plane and you've got a 2-hour block. You're going to do it, and also you're sitting there doing pattern work, right? You're spending a lot more time in the lower air on the ground, and the ground is the worst, right? Because it's like you have no airflow. Even at 1,000 feet, at least you've got a tiny bit of air coming in the vents, but that ground stuff just really takes it out of you.
It does. It doesn't take very long. Our friend Josh made a comment in the Discord when asked about this topic. He said, those few minutes running checklists before I can get the plane started and the AC cranking are getting unbearable. Heart goes out to you, Josh. We're very, very sorry.
Oh,
it's funny. I remember when I was training, McCollum's one runway and you can approach it from both the south and the north. And, when there was a long line waiting to take off and it was mild outside or it was even cool, I kind of enjoyed that time, just kind of catching up with my instructor or whoever's there and just you can kind of get the talkies out, just get what you need said done. But when it was summertime and you were number 8 for takeoff, you're like, I just want to turn back around and go to the ramp.
Yeah.
It's really brutal.
Yeah.
So
I love that Josh wrote in, because we expected it. We knew that he would, to remind us of the AC in his Cirrus. It's so great. I know that Thrust Flight in Dallas area, all of their planes have AC because they ordered new planes and they're like, we're in Dallas, we're going to have AC. Also the Sling TSI, there are 3 air conditioning systems that were invented this year for the Sling. Great thing about experimental. So the US Sling factory, their version's 26 pounds. It integrates into the plane. It's really cool. It's near the back of the engine. I remember one of the others is up kind of in the nose, and so it takes a slightly different cowling. That's a pretty cool thing that we're getting to the point that, remember when cars started to get AC? That was like people that had it and didn't. And now there's planes that are coming out with it. I don't know. I just think that's cool.
I have 2 cars. Neither has air conditioning.
Yeah. Did
so
they
you
originally?
Should be classically trained for this.
Yes.
By now.
Actually, I will say that's been a huge help. Being used to suffering, especially here in Nashville. It is super hot in the summer. And both my cars, one, the air conditioning was never an option that was chosen with it. In the 80s, an option, choosing to get air conditioning was a very expensive. It was like 10% the cost of the car added, right? Yeah. And then the other that's just not working.
Well, it also took horsepower, and the 80s cars did not have great horsepower.
No, it's it's bad. But
it could be our friend Cheryl and just have a sliding canopy.
I know.
Yeah.
What a cool plane she has.
Yes, there's a fair amount of jealousy there. But speaking of keeping things happy in the heat, another issue that we have to face are keeping our engines happy. They're already hot as it is. Flying in 100-degree temps is not the best thing in the world for them either.
Yeah, I climbing. I don't have you guys have a lot more instrumentation to tell you what's going on. I don't have anything. I have no CHT, no EGT, no nothing. All I have is oil temperature. That's really the only thing I can use just to have any idea of what's going on. And, but it's helpful. And you can see, when you're climbing out, even at VY for a while, it just, get into that cruise climb is what I do. Also, I think I generally try to do that anyway, so I can see better, look for traffic better, all of that. I try to use more of like about an 87 knot climb in the Cherokee 180. That's at least what I do. You do whatever you do. But you can definitely, if you're flying out of short fields or places where you've got to do a lot of immediate climbing or mountainous areas, you got to think about the stress you're putting on the plane.
Yeah. It's been apparent. I've watched because I give my partner a lot of crap for, he's used to flying a 757 and his cruise climb is, 4,000 feet per minute. And he's trying to accomplish the same thing in our 182. But I remember showing him, and it was last summer, I believe, but he was flying and he was yanking back on the yoke, and it had the performance to do it. We were climbing in the middle of the summer with the 2 of us in there, not much else. I mean, we were getting close to 1,000 feet per minute, but I pointed at our CHT temps and our EGT temps, and everything was pegged out. Yeah. And I'm like, yes, you can get this performance, but watch what happens when you do 500 feet per minute. And it was instantaneous. We didn't touch the mixture. We didn't touch the prop. We didn't touch anything else. And everything dropped back down. Came down a significant amount. And so I don't think it's to be understated that, you know what, it's nice to get up to the cooler air as quickly as possible, but think about your engine at the same time.
I usually really try to hustle through that first 1,000 feet, right? I want to get away from the ground as quickly as possible, safely. And then I can start thinking about what else am I going to do? What settings am I going to change? How much am I going to pitch forward? And yeah, it's like, just get into a more relaxed climb and things are a little easier anyway. Yeah.
Well, so the other part of this is equipment, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff we have in the plane that overheats. I already mentioned my iPad overheating.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of us are filming flying sometimes. And so you have cameras overheating. You have a lot of things. You're overheating. Everything's overheating. But with respect to iPads, it really does. I got caught in my own lack of planning because I was on such a long trip and I was just doing so many hops, which is no excuse, but I didn't have, usually what I would have is, some things on paper to back me up, diagrams and, all of that.
Right.
And, obviously the 530 has a lot of things too. I mean, there are other redundancies and such, but in the moment where it was like, find this thing now, it was like, oh, well, so iPad overheating, bad. I don't do my checklists on the iPad. I know many, many people do and swear by it. I did it for a long time. But one of the reasons why I stopped doing checklists on my iPad is because I don't want it to be on at all if I don't need it to be on. And it requires me to have physical checklists and it requires me to have paper. And it's like a way to sort of force that redundancy to be in place. But somebody in the Discord, was it CFI Nathan Ballard, that was talking about the backing material that you can put on an iPad or something?
Yes. So Nathan Ballard, I think Ben's going to talk about him in just a second here, but he recommends putting foil tape on the iPad to dissipate heat. Some people have different experiences with that. The thing that I notice the most is you got to get it out of the sun and you got to get it in air if at all possible. If your mount is in front of that, better yet. But that wasn't possible when I was training, at least.
We'll tell you, it's less of a problem if you have a high wing like a Cessna.
Yep.
Where you can turn those vents right down on top of it. And it doesn't take very long, especially when you get it to altitude. It does cool thing. And to Ted's point, getting it out of the sun is a big part of that. But yeah, I've had it happen even in my Cessna with cold air blowing on it. If we turn, or if you're in a climb, it usually happens in a climb because you have less air coming in during the climb and it's still hot at lower altitudes. So it has certainly happened.
Usually I just forget and I leave it in the sun. It's at a bad angle and it just sits there and just bakes in the sun. And as soon as I get out of the sun, it'll usually cool off for a bit. And I don't know if that's why I keep my checklist off of it. I guess I like the physical checklist because it's easy to grab. I'm not sitting there going through I'm
sun glare and
I love tech, but man, give me a checklist. I really like a physical checklist. So sorry, y'all.
There's another way. Adam, who is relatively new to the chat, I've been flying 2 to 3 hours a week this past 3 weeks, but I've been getting up at 4:30 a.m. to get out to the airport and fly while, number one, it's not too hot. And number two, convective conditions haven't developed yet. I think that's a great point.
That's it.
And I did that during training as well. Or, 7 p.m., during the summer, it doesn't get dark till 9. And so you can still get some laps in the pattern. You do have to worry about convection a little bit more at night than you do early in the morning. But I think that's a great point. Thanks for making it.
I want to shout out Adam there. That's Adam _. He's been putting up a lot of videos of doing a lot of flying of a Cub in Florida and lots of kind of chill background video stuff to watch. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Planes, Places, and Adventures. It lives in Florida and earlier mentioned having an icy breeze, which is basically an ice chest with a fan and a tube. I'm sorry, that's easiest way to understand what it is. So it's a way to get that cool air and really helps when you're down low.
It's an icy breeze.
Icy breeze. Hey, as advertised, as it says on the box.
It's effective. I've used them in the past, and they are effective. as long as there's ice in the cooler. When it melts, it doesn't do a lot. But they usually keep the ice pretty good while.
One of the things that I do, when I was living in New York City, I was riding my bike everywhere, and that was great, with the exception of the fact that when it's warm outside and hot in the summer and everything, if I was riding somewhere to meet somebody for dinner, it was like I would show up looking like a drowned rat. And so one of the things that I had, a friend of mine gave me, and I was like, "This is the greatest thing ever." Is a quick drying kind of microfiber style towel that has a little snap ring and whatnot, but it's not a big towel, but it's enough. And it has some sort of property in it where it doesn't get all stinky, gross or whatever. And carrying that around became habit. Then I use that in the plane now to be able to just, wipe sweat off of myself and have, that. So it seems like a dumb thing, but it really helps. And when I was on a long flight, to Texas or some of these other places, I actually would just put it around the back of my neck, or maybe put a little water on it and just put it on the back of my neck. There's all kinds of little things you can do to try to keep yourself right. But I think also keeping the sun off of you, and I know that Nathan Ballard is also, CFI Nathan has made a great video somewhere in his archive about the dangers of sun and skin and all that. So don't forget all of those things. But yeah, there's a lot of equipment in the plane that you can use to counter this stuff, or that will fall victim to it. Have you ever had any, have either one of you guys ever had avionics crap out on you?
No.
I've had the numbers on my radio become very hard to read as it got overheated. And but that's the only thing. I do want to highlight another comment from our friend Eric Grizzly. I'm sure it will be mentioned because it is right now, but don't forget water. I always have at least 3 bottles in the plane when I fly. Couldn't say it any better than that.
No, keep in mind, he's in a 2-seater and there's 3 bottles. We're not going to talk about that. I do, there is this thing, especially when you get into cross-country flying 2 hours or more, there's this whole thing about strategic dehydration, right? So you don't get in the air and then need to pee immediately and have to go land. I really don't like that, because being dehydrated is such a way to become dumb, right? Like, it doesn't take much dehydration for your brain just to shut down.
We have very small margins.
Yes. Yeah. Some of us are on the edge of being dumb to begin with.
That's right.
And so it seems like a lot of people talk about that, about the advantage of strategic dehydration. I'm really not a fan of that. Please, try to keep hydrated. This is a lot of work already. And yeah, so.
Well, keep in mind too that hydration happens well before. So it's really about what you're doing, preparing for the flight, even the day before, to really make sure that you're in a good spot. We're not all like Ben, where we can just, snort a cup of coffee and get an L39 and call it a day. We're not all made of steel.
Dream big, boys. Dream big.
Yeah. Yeah. And Grizzly says something that I was thinking as well, which is, remember, you're not also going to just pee this out, because on these hot days, you're just going to sweat it all out anyway. And so, man.
Well, there was another comment from our friend Juliet Echo Foxtrot, and I want to try to get back to it real quick. But if it doesn't smell like sweat and avgas, is it really a plane?
Yeah.
Especially when your plane's built in the 60s and it's got 50 something. There it goes. If it doesn't smell like sweat and avgas, is it even an airplane?
I know.
So I'm for that one all the way.
Totally.
Yeah. I bet they could cure cancer if they just took those flight school sheepskin sweat-soaked grotesque seat covers out and just analyze that. There's probably all kinds of things in there that are scientific discoveries that are incubating in these flying greenhouses.
Right.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of shout outs. I'm going to make the first one because I just so excited for this guy. We've talked about this gentleman a lot. His name is Nathan Ballard. And he just earned his Master CFI accreditation.
Yeah.
Man, that is a huge deal. You can find his picture on the website, nafinet.org.
Not
Ted
only
will have
fans.
that linked. That's a National Association of Flight Instructors. Ted will have that linked. And we just want to give him a huge, huge shout out.
Yeah.
Nathan also has started a Patreon group. So, I mean, some of the best instructional content on the interwebs, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're so lucky to have CFI Nathan Ballard here and CFI Erica for AeroSafe, who all have their own channels and communities and things that they're doing. And so please continue to seek those folks out. They are beyond friends of the show. They are a part of it, really. They kind of give us they'll tell us if we're going to go the wrong direction or not. So and they always add to every conversation.
To keep in mind, they're also the ones that know something.
That's right.
And we try to keep that. We try to say that all the time, right? They're the experts. We're just talking.
RH was trying to give us this whole thing about, you guys are all right. You don't need to self-deprecate so much. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I think we do.
Yeah.
One more. We did get another review on Apple Podcasts. This comes to us from Craig909. The title of this review is As Advertised, 5 stars. I listened to several different aviation podcasts, but this is the first one I paid for. They delivered just as promised in the about paragraph, but somehow better. Well done, guys. Keep it up. And that about paragraph is just saying, hey, we want to be your aviation friends to share your experiences with, basically.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you very much for that.
2 other pointers, and I'll put these in the show notes, but there were 2 recent videos that are kind of related to this, especially talking about density altitude, which we could spend a whole episode on. But again, there are experts that talk about that. The first is Bold Method, talking about, does departing in the morning with lower density altitude really help? The answer is yes, by the way, but that link to that will be in there. The other one is Flight Insight, saying, can you take off from Death Valley? And so those are those videos came up in the last 2 months, and so they're kind of right on the topic here of things to think about and worry about.
We can speak to density, but not density altitude.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. So anything else, gentlemen, that y'all would like to bring up at this point in time?
No, but one thing. I just really appreciate everybody in the chat giving us all of this great feedback. And I really appreciate everybody in the Discord. The conversations have been so lively. I've been a little out, it's sometimes it's a lot, right? Like if you are out of it for a couple of days and you come back in, it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many neat things going on in here. I'm just so thrilled to see everybody contributing and, having something to say, and the spirit of it, it's just positive and constructive, and it's just a great place to be. So I'm always really grateful to just everybody. We started this whole thing because we just didn't really have a big community when we were starting out. I just sure didn't. So to see such a community come from that is always massive. So I just want to always continue to thank people, because it means the world. And to be able to fly with people like Josh, or meet new people, or all that, it's just such a great thing. So thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. It is definitely a gift that keeps on giving. So we do not take it for granted. I can promise you that.
It's really cool to see people's accomplishments and their adventures in there.
Yeah.
We're not all flying every day and doing that kind of thing, but there's a lot of people that are out flying and sharing their stories and all that. Just love that.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you listening and being part of the community. We and the rest of the community are your pilot friends. So join us on Patreon. Send us a PayPal drop or contact us at midlifepilotpodcast.com. Next week, we're going to talk about mentors. Do you need one? How to choose one? and things of that nature. But until then, we're going to call that a wrap for episode 88 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Look forward to catching up with you guys next week. Y'all take care.